Hello, I wanted to just quickly jump in and do kind of a recap of week 3, some of the, again, kind of going over some themes that I've seen in the discussion board, and to just kind of recap where we've been. So in our first discussion board this week, we were talking about learning centers in the public schools, and I think there's some general consensus that children are not allowed adequate free time in public schools, and especially with the implementation of No Child Left Behind and now Common Core standards, that doesn't seem to be reversing anytime soon. So the question becomes, what do we do about it? As parents and as professionals, it's our responsibility to educate ourselves about those policies that are being implemented, and then advocate for children, for our own and for others, to whether that means being supportive of local teachers and local administration as they're looking at how they're going to implement the requirements, the way that you vote, the way that you participate in community discussions. But bottom line, it's our responsibility to be informed about what's happening with our kids in school, and then always be asking, so what do I do about it? Well, how can I best contribute to the conversation as a professional for what's best for children? And then in the spiritual life discussion this week, when we talked, it was kind of asking that question about what do you do when people are saying, oh my gosh, I hope you don't get that kid, or you have that kid in your class, he's terrible, he's horrible, you're going to struggle with this or that. There's a quote by Zig Ziglar that says, don't judge someone based on someone else's opinion. And I cannot tell you how many times that has been true when it comes to working with children. Sometimes the child that one teacher struggles with is another teacher's favorite. They just click and they get along. Sometimes it's not an issue of it being a good teacher or a bad teacher, or a good kid or a bad kid, but for lots of reasons, sometimes teachers and kids don't click and they don't build a relationship that they ought to have. But that doesn't mean that that's not possible for you to build that appropriate relationship and positive relationship with that same child. So it is always our responsibility to have those kids come in with a clean slate, give them the opportunity to get to know them as individuals, and to find what is going to work and what's not going to work in your classroom with that child. And so I would encourage you that if you do experience that, where someone is trying to warn you about a particular child, when someone does that to me, I just say, I appreciate your concern, but I'm going to just go into this with a fresh perspective and a clean slate, and we're going to have a great year. I'm going to give him the opportunity to jump in here, and we'll see what happens. We might have our struggles, but we're gonna go in assuming that we're gonna have a good year. The last question is something that is particularly fascinating to me. It's the Reggio Emilia curriculum based from Reggio Emilia, Italy. There are so many fantastic things about the way that that children learn when they are allowed to go through this kind of project process where things are not pre-planned. So as we're going into week 4 and talking about themes and the different ways that we can approach our planning and our curriculum, one of the things I really love about Reggio Emilia is the perspective, the trust that they put into the hands of the children. They trust kids to do what they need to do, to learn in the ways that they need to learn. That doesn't mean we just throw them in the classroom and it's a free-for-all. The teachers are actively and thoughtfully asking questions to deepen the learning every single day. At the end of the day, they meet as a team and they say, okay, these are the observations that we had today of what the kids are interested in and what they want to do next. So now what do we do to have things ready to go for them tomorrow to be able to take that next step in their learning? So it's very, very purposeful. Everything that the children do is documented and displayed. Their learning is very, very carefully recorded. So it's not at all just if you hear someone and they think Reggio just means you throw kids in a classroom and see what happens. It's not that at all. But it does allow children the freedom to follow their interests. And when they follow their own interests and they have engaging materials and an engaging environment, they do jump in there and they participate. And if you can imagine a classroom where all kids are engaged in different activities of learning that they are interested in, you don't have the classroom management issues just almost disappear. When kids are engaged and they are being taught and modeled a way of communicating that is respectful and is conflict resolution skill heavy, they learn how to negotiate difficulties on their own in many ways. And the fact is that typically they're so engaged in what they're doing, there's very little downtime, I guess you could say, for goofy conflicts. There's not a lot of time and energy that kids will spend picking at each other when they're really engaged in what they're doing. So I very highly recommend that you don't at the end of this course put Reggio Emilia away. Whether it may not be something that you ever implement fully. There are lots of reasons why it's not implementing it exactly as they do is not always realistic here in our classrooms. But what elements that you like that you could draw into your classroom that could improve your classroom, I would strongly encourage you to continue to think about that and learn more about that. And so I also want to share a couple of resources. This book is called Windows on Learning: Documenting Young Children's Work. Several people mentioned the way that they document kids' work in Reggio Emilia as being really interesting. So this is great, by Judy Harris-Helm, Sally Beninke, and Kathy Steinheimer. And you'll see that forward there by Lillian Katz. She is the author of the book, The Project Approach, which I have at the office. Anytime, if you are ever at an NAEOIC conference, anywhere where Lillian Katz is speaking, if you have the opportunity to go to her session, I strongly encourage you to. It will be it'll be inspiring. I've had the opportunity to hear her speak on a few occasions, and every time I walk out with just a renewed vision of how important early childhood education is. So strongly encourage you to do that. If you are wanting to do some reading and not quite be so textbook heavy, this book is called Nurture Shock by Poe Bronson and Ashley Merriman. And so Nurture Shock, New Thinking About Children. This is a very interesting book about some of the research that they did on it with kids on a variety of topics that are very interesting, like why kids lie, and the racism, what children come to think about other races. And basically it's just over and over some ideas that what you think in the conventional kind of intuitive thing that we do is not always, as it turns out, the best thing to do. So I'm going to give you an example. The chapter is called Why White Parents Don't Talk About Race. And so the idea is, it turns out most families who do not have racial prejudices tend to believe if they go through their life and demonstrate a lack of prejudice, if they are nice to people of all different races, if their kids are around families of different races, that their kids will see their modeled behavior, appropriate behavior toward other races, and will adopt that same thinking. And that's not necessarily in and of itself the best scenario, as they will argue a more direct approach may be required. So I'm going to leave it at that. And but I just found the book incredibly interesting as a parent and as someone who works with young children, that sometimes the thing that we think that we're doing right maybe just needs to be tweaked just a little bit, just that little bit of language difference, or a little bit more instruction or less instruction, depending on what the particular issue is. But it's very interesting, so I wanted to share you those resources with you. I just want to encourage everybody. We're halfway through the class, so a little bit more than. We only have 2 more weeks. So if there's anything that I can do for you to help you be successful in the course, please contact me and let me know. I just want to encourage everybody to jump in those discussion boards and continue to be thoroughly active in those and submit all of your work on time as much as possible. If you have, like I said, an unexpected or atypical personal situation that's preventing you from doing that fully, please let me know, and we'll see what we can do from there. But otherwise, I hope to have a great week 4 with you guys. Thanks. Good night.